You're listening to the Third Coast Gridiron on the LSG Network with your host, Marc Henry.
Can you believe we're 2 weeks into the high school season and it's getting thick, man? H-Town's podcast is here, the Third Coast Gridiron. I am your host, Marc Henry, live on the Lone Star Gridiron Network, the authority for high school football. We're going to talk a couple of matchups that we got coming up this week. That features a Houston-Austin matchup that I think is really key when it comes to looking at the top teams in the state. And we'll talk about a local matchup here in the H between two powers that definitely has some state ramifications with it as well. Right here on the TCG, the Third Coast Gridiron, I am your host, Marc Henry. We'll come back, we'll talk a few scores from last week, and then we'll get to the nitty-gritty right here on the TCG.
Looking to boost your company's marketing? Look no further than Fresh Media Works. Podcasting is the best way to promote your brand and increase your customer base. You can create your own show, be a guest on other podcasts, or advertise on existing podcasts to reach a valuable audience. Don't wait. Start elevating your marketing game today with Fresh Media Works. Call now, 713-269-4620, or find us online at freshmediaworks.com/podcasting.
Let's run through a few scores from week 2. Aldine gets a big victory, 14-7 over North Forest. That's a big victory. Shout out to Aldine. That's a big victory for that program, who struggled in the last few years. Fulshear over Fort Bend Ridge Point, 49-41. That's a big victory for Fulshear. Of course, Ridge Point came in to that game probably as the favorite, but they get the victory. Fulshear. Shout out to those guys. Langham Creek over Jersey Village, 40-16. Stratford gets a big one over Oak Ridge, 66-28. Great win for those guys. Tomball Memorial over Cypress Creek, 52-7. Katy Paytown gets a victory over Spring Decaney, 18-12. That's a big victory for Paytown, man. I think that those guys definitely, a couple years ago they were, in the state championship. So that's a big one for those guys. Willis, big victory over Klein Collins, 40-7. Let's move to some other scores here. As we talked about last week, Aldine, Eisenhower. Listen, I think that these guys are quietly building something, man. 30-0 over Clearbrook. I think that those guys may be, flying under the radar. And they actually got some big-time athletes over there. We'll look deeply into those guys here. As the season progresses. We'll have to get out to a game and check out Eisenhower. I really think that they're a sleeper over there in that district and probably a favorite to win it. Shadow Creek over Clear Creek, 34-7. Baytown Sterling over Galena Park, 40-14. Westbrook with a big victory over Lumberton, 19-16. That's a big one. Lumberton's been a really good team the last few years, and I think that's a big victory, man. We're going to talk about a few more games here. Sea King takes care of Dickinson 28-14. Northbrook with a 7-0 victory over Spring Woods. That's a big victory for those guys. Jordan over Fort Bend Travis 41-0. That's a great victory. I think that Jordan's looking to challenge Katy over in that district. They've been close the last 2 years, and they just haven't been able to crack that nugget, man. And I think that those guys know that they're close to getting that done. And, they're really looking forward to that game. They don't want to look too far ahead. Of course, it's a couple more weeks away. And that's probably a game that the Third Coast is going to have to pull up at. I think that's a big one. But let's break down a few games here that were important. Let's travel on the road a little bit. We talked about this North Shore Crowley matchup where North Shore went on the road up to the DFW area. And they got the 28-13 victory. But the Mustangs had a little bit of a struggle. Crowley's a good team. They have some athletes that can match up on the outside, and they actually moved the ball pretty well. They got 5 turnovers from the Mustangs, which is a key. The Mustangs looked a little bit out of whack, a little bit out of sorts there, but hey, Crowley stood up. I like what I saw out of those guys. Is we're looking at around the state type thing. But North Shore gets the victory 28-13. 5 turnovers. They're going to have to clean that up. I know Coach Gass is going to be on that, and that's a pretty big deal for those guys. But they return home this week, and we'll break down their big game this week here just a little bit as they got one of their rivals here. That's a pretty big rivalry every year. We'll talk about the Mustangs' opponent this week. But Atascocita, got to talk about Atascocita, man. I really like what they're doing these first 2 weeks. They went and took care of Big Red, the Big Red Machine, the Katy Tigers, 41-24. They were down early, but they came back in the second half and just ran it down their throats, man. Corday Mack, I can't say enough about this athlete this year. He's, a 4-star running back. He's coming into his junior year, but he's taking snaps under center. He's been spectacular. He's throwing the ball. He's running it, over 350 yards of total offense. He's giving them a punch that they hadn't had at the quarterback position from a running standpoint. Now, Zion Brown was amazing. Of course, all district, all area, Greater Houston. This is a guy that's he's gone on to college. And listen, for the most part, Coach Stump has always had great quarterbacks over there. But I think that Corday Mack's giving him another element that they just hadn't had, man. I really like what he's doing and controlling the tempo. Corday Mack's showing up and showing out every week, and they get the big victory over Katy, man, to run their record to 2-0. They got a big one this week, and we're gonna pause here for a quick commercial break. And we're gonna come back and talk about those couple of games here that feature Atascocita and Austin Westlake. Definitely a game that we need to talk about right now, right here on the Third Coast Gridiron. We'll take a break, we'll pause, and we'll come back and we'll break down these games right here on the TCG, the Third Coast Gridiron.
Have you ever thought about doing your own podcast? It is the absolute best way to grow your brand, spread your message, and build your following. Fresh Media Works can help. We do all the heavy lifting, and you just focus on your message. To find out how easy we can make launching your new podcast, call 713-269-4620 or check us out at freshmediaworks.com.
Hey coaches, you may have already missed the boat on getting your own coaches show this season on Lone Star Gridiron, but did you know we're doing basketball shows this year? That's right. If you're a basketball coach and you want your own coaches show, we have a great business model that allows you or your booster club to make money from the show and at the same time promote your program, your kids, and all the amazing things happening with your basketball team. To find out how you can get your very own basketball coaches show, reach out to Chris at 713-269-4620.
Westfield travels to North Shore. This is a big game. This is a rivalry that's been dating back, and North Shore has really been more the dominant team in these matchups. Westfield's coming off a loss to Hightower, and North Shore's coming off a road trip to the DFW area, and they come in 2-0. This is going to be a big matchup. I like North Shore in this game just because I think that they're going to be hungry and eager to get out there and clean up some of the mistakes they made. We were at the game against South Oak Cliff, and they looked like the North Shore of old, with the big playability, the running game, which was sharp, and the defense was lights out. I think that North Shore's, here to prove a point that they're really that team, statewide, that guys or teams or everybody needs to know about. Now, Westfield's coming off a tough one. They beat Seed King the first week, and they're coming off a tough 14-7 loss to Hightower this past week, which I think they're going to be looking to get back in the winning column as well. I think it's going to be a good game. Who wins the matchup up front is going to be the key. I think Westfield's always been strong, one of those teams that you know about that can run the football, be physical, and play good D. I think that this is going to be a key matchup for those guys. And, they're on the road. They know they haven't beaten North Shore in a long time. And I think that they're going to come out and be hyped for this game. Whether they can take that first punch, because North Shore's going to come out. They're at home. This is a team that doesn't lose at home. So, I think that this is going to be a big game. And we'll keep an eye on this one. Now, the other game that we're talking about is Atascocita goes on the road to face a very good Austin Westlake team. Reese Wise is one of the top quarterbacks in the state of Texas. He can really sling it. He can run it. And he's been on a tear so far these first 2 weeks of the season, which, we talked about Atascocita, who has Torrey Blaylock and Corday Mack in the backfield. Isaiah Rashid's also been playing well at the quarterback position. There's a 2027 guy that's been playing as well. We talked about Broderick Malone here the last couple of weeks as a guy that's been playing well for Atascocita as well. So, that being said, this is a key matchup for Atascocita, I think, to show that they're one of the top teams in the state. They go on the road to a hostile environment. Austin Westlake's going to be rocking for this. They always run into a Houston team probably, in the fourth or fifth round of the playoffs, being a 6A Division I team usually. But I think that Westlake's a powerful team that knows that they have a chance to make a run to state. And they're going to test themselves early with this game. I think this is a big matchup for, two teams that have state championship aspirations. And it's two of the better teams in the state. I think if Atascocita comes away with this, they got a claim to be a stake claim, to really shout it out to be, hey, we're a top contender in the state of Texas. They go down and knock off Austin Westlake. They got to be top 2 or 3 in the state with that. That's a big victory. Of course, there's some other games around the state that have implications in that as well. Both of these teams will be top 10 teams when it comes into this contest this weekend. And I really like Atascocita in this game. I really think that they have the wherewithal to go down there and get it done. I really think that, their offense and defense will travel. They have some of the best talent in the Houston area, and I think that these guys are ready for that big time limelight. Now they got some big games coming up down the stretch when it comes to district, which we all know about. And we'll have to pull up on those guys for that. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where you have to know what your team's about, man. Another guy for Atascocita that I really like is cornerback, safety, defensive back Brandon Washington. We're talking about a guy in the class 2025 that's a sticky defender, comes up and tackles well. He's been playing well for Atascocita on the defensive side of the ball. And that's what you want, is you want to have those playmakers and those guys that play well defensively. So, Brandon Washington is one of those guys to watch because they're going to need it. Austin Westlake's a high octane offense. They like to pass the ball. They like to run the ball. And you're going to have guys on the edge that can play in space and tackle well. Brandon Washington is one of those guys. Just had a chance to look at some of his highlights against Katy. He's one of those guys on that defense for Atascocita that plays fast and, a guy that can tackle well in the open field. So, 2 big games around the Houston area teams, man, in the H. I think that, we'll definitely have our eyes on. Stay tuned right here on the Third Coast Gridiron week to week. On the Lone Star Gridiron Network, man, we're going to have you locked in and loaded on some of the best action around the H, and even we'll talk a little recruiting at times, man. So stay tuned. We appreciate everybody that's been tapping in right here on the TCG, the Third Coast Gridiron. We'll holler at you next week.